Welcome back, welcome back. Her name is Esperanza, which in English means hope. For the last couple of years, she has been tipped as the rising star of jazz. Since January, she's performed twice at the White House, the first time at President Barack Obama's inauguration. And then a third appearance last week. She was his choice of artist to perform at the 2009 Noberl Peace Prize ceremony. And she's only 26 years old. Before we speak to her, let's hear Esperanza Spalding in action. And now Esperanza is with us. Congratulations, you've had a fantastic year, Esperanza.
Yes, it's been a year of years. Yes, thank you, thank you.
And and between the two events, there were three. There was the spoken jazz one, the spoken one in the middle. But how different was it, the inauguration of President Obama and then the Nobelization of President Obama in Stockholm? Were they very different occasions? Was one more moving than the other, or?
Actually, I didn't perform at the inauguration. I experienced the inauguration in an apartment in Harlem to the throngs of Harlemites screaming in the streets and yelling and celebrating. The first time I performed at the White House was for Stevie Wonder's award of the George Gershwin Prize. Right. So that was the first time that I was actually at the White House. And so to me, this was the first ceremony that I've been in attendance to honoring the president. And it was phenomenal, very special, very moving. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. And had you, before the inauguration, had he seen you perform, or had you met him before that? How magically, how were you picked?
I honestly have no idea, literally. I think that the first time that he heard me perform was at the event honoring Stevie Wonder, and I was a guest. I was invited there to perform by Stevie Wonder. So it was actually just good fortune that I was invited to that event, and the president apparently liked my music, and I was invited back a couple more times by the Obamas.
Tremendous, tremendous. I read here, is it true that you sort of knew and started playing the violin, knew you wanted to be a singer at the age of 4 or 5, is that right?
At the age of 4 or 5, I thought I was destined to be a violin player. And I was wrong, obviously. But it wasn't so much the specific instrument, it just was music. It struck me very hard. The first time I saw Yo-Yo Ma performing, I had never seen live music or heard live music. And I was just, my mind was completely blown. And I told my mom, I want to do that. I want to do that. And I didn't know then, obviously, that 10 years later I'd be playing the granddaddy of the violin family. But yes, yeah, music was awakened to me at a very young age.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And how did you make the move from violin to, you were sort of self-taught on the violin, weren't you? But then how did it come about that you made that big leap from violin to bass?
Well, I started hearing improvised music. As a violinist, I started hearing Stefan Grappelli and Stuff Smith, and actually, I said to myself, like, wow, what is that? How do they know how to just make that up? The concept really blew my mind. And I decided that I needed to quit violin because I was feeling too limited playing parts in an orchestra over and over and over and over again. So I threw the violin away, not literally, obviously, but metaphorically. And within that week, I stumbled upon the bass, and someone came in to the room and described the basic concept of a blues progression and the basic dynamic that happens when musicians are improvising. And again, the second time in my life, I was completely captivated. And in that room, I mean, playing these sad little out-of-tune notes on the bass, I kind of knew that actually now I'm destined to play improvised music, and the rest has just been history since then.
So who's been the most inspirational or most influential musician on you as you've become your own self performing now? But who's been your inspiration? Was there one person?
Well, not one person, because I also write and I sing, and I mean, there obviously are phenomenal examples of people doing that in the jazz world, but I also love Stevie Wonder, I love R&B, I love all the music that was on the radio when I wasn't practicing my jazz music and listening to the records. So the main inspirations for me as complete musicians are Stevie Wonder, Wayne Shorter, and Milton Nascimento, Jimi Hendrix, but I haven't had a chance to explore that side of myself yet. That's coming up, I hope.
One other thing you have in common with the president, in addition to these great events, is of course that you both come from a mixed race background. He's talked sometimes about what effect it's had on his. Have you known racial discrimination, racism in your life, or did your mother manage to protect you from that?
Well, it's tricky. It's much more subtle for a black female than it is for a black male, but I have brothers. So growing up, my mother always made sure that we were conscious and aware of things that we were observing in our neighborhood or observing from the treatment of our friends. And I myself observed, of course, it's hard to understand the difference when you're experiencing it firsthand, but I have seen instances of discrimination to my brothers, and I feel the difference sometimes towards me. But what's fortunate is I'm lucky enough to have grown up in an era that I've never had the impression that my color was any hindrance to my capability. So that probably nullifies any experiences I've had of discrimination, because I've always believed that I could do whatever I wanted to. And that's probably a primary difference from the experience that Obama would have had in the decades that he was in his adolescence. Yeah. Yeah.
You're right, and I mean, in fact, it's not many years ago that black singers were not allowed to stay in the hotel where they were performing and things like that. And as you say, you're fortunate. Maybe black isn't beautiful everywhere. It's not, but you are fortunate today, aren't you, to be living in a more hospitable, liberal time, really.
Yes, and I guess the main difference is I can run up against people's ideology that maybe personally they have a problem with me because of my skin, but systematically, you know, in my school and in the opportunities of my work, when I travel abroad, I feel welcome. I don't feel discriminated against. And again, that's a difference still of being a black female and a black male. And I sincerely hope that that black males also get to enjoy at the same level the freedom and the comfortability when I travel abroad and at home that I feel as a black female.
And when are you going to explore your Jimi Hendrix side then, as you said?
Yes, that's a good question. It's sneaking in there little by little. I mean, I'm categorized as a jazz musician, but that word doesn't mean a whole lot literally anymore when you're describing an idiom or what people are actually playing, a jazz musician. So when we play concerts now, my philosophy is definitely to make sure people are rocking out, whether it's actually to a rock song or just to something that's funky. So I'm sure that people, as they keep their eyes open, they're going to feel more and more of that rock coming through. I mean, rock comes from the blues, right? And jazz comes from the blues, so they're a lot more similar than you might think.
Well, it's a delight to talk to you, and we hope to have the chance of seeing you live in concerts, whether it's in England or our viewers all around the world. We all look forward to seeing more of you, and this has been a real pleasure to talk. Thank you ever so much, Esperanza. Hope to see you again soon.
Thank you.
The delightful Esperanza Spalding. Former Chilean President Ricardo Lagos will join us in a moment. after this incredibly short break.